Good evening, everyone. We'll just wait a few more moments for people to join us today. We had over 190 registrants for today. So we have a lot of people filing in. So we're going to be, I'm glad to see some familiar faces. Salut, Ronald, ça va? Okay, we've got some friendly faces. I know there's also Ron, Jetty on the call, and Jane, and it's great to see so many people. Marjorie Bryce, my old high school teacher, is here. Shout out Canterbury High. So I think we'll wait till about 7:05. Nous attendrons jusqu'à 19h05 et puis on commencera. I hope everyone was able to enjoy some of the beautiful weather today. Finally, a little cooler, still scorching hot around 12 when I was out dropping flyers in my long sleeve shirt and long pants, but it was nice on the shoulders of the day. Alors, bienvenue à tout le monde. Nous sommes à l'heure maintenant. Alors, bienvenue à tout le monde. Moi, je m'appelle Lane Johnson. I am the City Councillor for College Ward. My name is Lane Johnson, and I am la conseillère pour la Quartier Collège. And this evening, we are here for a public information session on the proposed zoning amendment for 2946 Baseline. We are welcoming members of the surrounding communities, which is lovely. And today we are here to learn from the proponents. So it's Brigil is the builder and Foten as the planning consultants that will offer us a walkthrough of their proposed plan. To give you a sense of the process. So what we see in front of us today is a proposed rezoning. So you may or may not be familiar with this, but last year, slipping into early this year, the City of Ottawa's official plan was approved by the province, the new official plan. And we are going to see a different kind of density being welcomed with that official plan. So for Baseline, Baseline in the official plan is understood as a Main Street corridor. And because Baseline is so wide, it has the, required right of way at this particular site. The zoning would allow for up to 40 stories. And so Brigil, who had already proposed phase 2 of this 2-part project, has submitted a rezoning application to fit within the new guidelines of the city's official plan. So I am here today, as I am inviting all of you here today as members of the community to listen. We are here to ask what questions we need to inform our comments to the city planner. The city planner is Kieran Watson. Under the new rules from the province, city staff are no longer present at public consultations, but she will be receiving all the comments from this and she can be communicated with directly. We will have shared out much of her information and some of the publicity for this information session today, and we'll certainly be sharing it after the fact as well. All this to say, the way it works is, a proposal like this, and the planner has an opportunity to assemble all of the comments, to review all of the studies required by the City of Ottawa, and to provide a recommendation to the Planning and Housing Committee that says to either accept or to refuse the proposed amendment. And we probably don't anticipate seeing that report come to the Planning or Housing Committee. Probably the earliest we would see it is late September. That's currently what's in the planning rationale and the other documents, late September. So we really are at the beginning of the process here. So Brigitte is here to learn as well from the questions from the community. They will be given the opportunity to go back and refine their proposal if that is what is appropriate to them. So we may see, you know, some variations on what was first proposed based on the comments here. There's also comments from the Urban Design Review Panel, which is a panel of architects as their peers. So there's lots of places and spaces for feedback. This is the initial conversation. And anyway, so I am here to listen. I am here, you know, I have not, you know, decided how I will be voting on this proposal. So I'm here to learn and to listen and to ask questions just as all of you are. The format for today is a webinar. We're sort of, it's where we are requesting that you use the Q&A or chat boxes to ask your questions, because as you can see, there are at this point close to 100 people on the call, and we want to be able to get through as many questions as we can. So that you can have the information you need to follow up appropriately. And I'm sure you're saying, well, then why don't you stop talking, Lane? And that's fair. But I just wanted to offer for context, I've done a little bit of research to bring us to today, because I do know with phase one, there's been a lot of disappointment with the grocery store situation. So I'm going to put that out there. The grocery store was, you know, an intended retail use for the phase one. And certainly I know that many were very much looking forward to this grocery store and haven't seen it materialize and are feeling a little bit like, well, how are we going to, you know, permit, how are we going to trust? How are we going to go there with these guys? You know, how are we going to figure this out? And I appreciate that, because certainly we do want to see more amenities in College Ward that are walkable, that are local, that have that pedestrian access. We want to know that there's going to be adequate transit services. So again, you know, with Baseline having the proposed bus rapid transit, when's that going to happen? How will that serve this community? I appreciate all of these questions. I just did a little bit of research, and we're going to come out with a bigger piece on this in the coming weeks, but just wanted to see how College Ward's population has changed over the last 20 years since amalgamation. I was really curious to know, because I heard, you know, anecdotally while I was campaigning, that it hasn't moved too much. And sometimes that can be part of the challenge when we're looking for that business case for amenities. For the small business community to consider making College Ward their home. And I decided to compare it to Barrhaven, because Barrhaven, they got all the stuff. They got all the parks, they got the ball fields, they got the stores, they got, you know, they're going to have their own downtown, right? So I was thinking, why don't we compare it to Barrhaven? And what I found from the city of Ottawa is that Barrhaven's population since 2001, since about amalgamation, has grown by about 100%. And College Ward's population has decreased by 2.8%. We've actually not grown in the last 20 years, which is something that you can see sort of. But change has happened all around us. And so, you know, I do think we need to consider how bringing more families into College Ward will create those investments that we so desperately need, will create homes for, you know, new Canadians or others looking to find a home of their own. I don't suggest that Brigitte's proposal or any other proposal is the solution to this. I'm not advocating in that sense. But what I'm trying to offer is that, you know, with the bills coming through the province and the city's new official plan, I think we do need to prepare ourselves for these kinds of conversations and to try and get what we want for our neighborhoods out of these conversations. We want to talk about what changes can help us realize the neighborhoods we want. And so I'm hoping to invite us all into the conversation like that. because you know, to not have moved too much in 20 years is, I have to say, I was a little bit shocked. I was a little bit shocked. And I think we have some catching up to do. And I think with some of that in this proposal, but I'm sure many more will see, we will have the opportunity to get the investment in our neighborhoods that we so richly deserve. We deserve good roads. We deserve better transit services. We deserve local businesses. We deserve for our schools to stay open. And all of those have consequences when we don't think critically about change. So I'm going to invite, you know, Frank to start us off. Frank is the architect on the file, and he's going to walk us through the presentation and introduce us to the team that's here to answer all of our questions. And again, I just want to signal my absolute appreciation for everyone taking the time to join us. And I'll acknowledge that we are on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people before we go any further. So my apologies for not doing that at the beginning. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to the preamble. I appreciate it. And Frank, by all means, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Councillor. Certainly, I'm very happy to be here tonight. My name is Frank Puentes. I am a partner architect with Neff Architects. We have offices in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal. And I am not only the partner in charge of this project, but I am also the responsible for our Ottawa office. So I am the Ottawa director. It's been more than 15 years that I'm working in Ottawa, and I know the community, and I have been developing projects all over the city. With me, I want to introduce you to our client, Brigil, Mr. Jean-Luc Rivard, who is one of the vice presidents of the firm and in charge of developing. At the same time, I want to introduce you to FOTEN, Mr. Timothy Bed and Mr. Thomas Freeman, who are also responsible for this development. And at the same time, tonight we have Mr. Jonathan Loxman, who is from Siteform, our landscape architect. Lots of successful projects and practically good interventions for the community. Saying that, if I may, I'm gonna present myself a presentation, if you don't mind. I'm just gonna share my screen. Please allow me.
Do you want to share? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. So please just let me know if you're capable to see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is a presentation that was created for the UDRP, Urban Design Brief Committee. And this is the Urban Design Brief document. So I'm going to be using this in order to explain the project. During this presentation, I'm just going to focus on specifics related to zoning regulations, including context. That I'm going to ask FOTEN to help me out. I'm going to also present the concept and the ideas behind our development. I'm going to introduce you to some plans and sections where we're going to discuss about landscaping, and we're going to show you some perspectives and elevations that we consider important, I would say, the development of the design. And at the final, I will simply pass very quickly over some statistics. So if I may, I'm just going to jump into the zoning and regulations. And I'm going to ask Timothy to maybe guide us here and give us a little bit more of context. Thank you, Tim.
Sure. Thanks, Frank. And thanks, everyone, for being here. As Frank mentioned, my name is Timothy Bede, a senior planner at FOTEN, Planning and Design. So our job is really to focus on the planning side of things and the policy context and aspects of this project and this proposal. So I understand that people are here really to talk about the building in its form and what we're doing here and what we're proposing here. So I'll be brief in terms of talking about the policy, and very happy to continue the discussion in the question and answer if I haven't addressed anything, or if there's anything that you'd like to talk about in more detail. In general, this image that we have up on the screen is from the new official plan, which was approved and adopted by the municipality, the province, last year. It's a complete rework of the city's planning and growth management framework, and it establishes a hierarchy of transects and designations for sites throughout the city, and giving guidance on how they could be developed into the future. So as you can see here, the site is on what Councillor Johnson noted as a Main Street corridor. And in the city of Ottawa, the Main Street Corridor is one of the designations that's meant to accommodate the most growth within, an interurban area like the center of town, but also in areas like this on major roadways and corridors that can accommodate growth in a way that the city believes can transition well and fit within its community. The official plan, just to take a step back for a second, is also it's established some very ambitious growth targets within the whole urban area, which we're in here, and a number of really important of those directives and objectives are really focused on finding ways to create growth within infill opportunities and avoiding growth with, out in this more suburban or greenfield development. That's for a number of reasons. It's meant to capitalize on existing infrastructure, existing facilities, schools, parks, employment opportunities. And there's also a really important environmental sustainability aspect to that in terms of, there's a lot of evidence out there that creating more dense urban and semi-urban environments is really important for achieving, greenhouse reduction goals and climate change goals, as well as creating those communities that are healthy and walkable. So in that light, the cities in this new official plan, the city is achieving or attempting to achieve more of its growth through this type of intensification on infill sites. And to create a situation in a context where the majority of trips that people are taking for whatever reason, leisure or recreation, employment, are done by sustainable transportation. That includes like public transportation, walking, bicycling, and the such. And also an important goal within the official plan, and it comes up quite often, and it's been a major guiding aspect of this project, is to improve the sophistication, I guess, if you will, of development and how it fits into its context and how it contributes and complements its context as well. So as Councillor Johnson mentioned, the Main Street corridor is meant to accommodate, in the right context where the right-of-way width is 30 meters or greater, heights up to 40 stories. That doesn't mean it's a green light for 40 stories, but it means that in these types of situations, we can start to consider if that's appropriate and if it can fit within its community. Which again is something that Frank is going to speak to more in his portion of the presentation, but it's been an important aspect as we've kind of worked through the various iterations of the project. The official plan then goes on to say, on these sites where you have that right-of-way width that's appropriate and the designations, that's the Main Street corridor, then you need to start to look at transition, at building articulation, at massing, and contributing to that positive built form that benefits the community. So that's our starting point, and that's where we've come from, and that's why this application is for a zoning bylaw amendment and not an official plan amendment, because the project as proposed, we believe fits within the guiding principles and the policy of the official plan. Next slide, Frank. I think I can talk to zoning now if you'd like.
Yes.
So the zoning on the site it had a long history and it's a little bit more complex. I'll just keep it very high level, but again, I'm happy to kind of jump into more detail if need be through the question and answer. The original zoning on the site for both the two sites here, 2946 and 2940, which are both owned by Brazil, was approved in 2014. So the phase 1, 2, and 3, which are currently under construction and have received approval through zoning as well as the site plan approval, are meant to accommodate on phase 1, 13 stories, phase 2, 16 stories, and then phase 3, 10 stories. So that was the initial zoning, which really consolidated the two sites in terms of their interface with the buildings, parking ratios, access and egress. The zoning established the framework for the phase 1, 2, and 3, as well as the 4, 5, and 6, which we're talking about today. For 4, 5, and 6, the zoning was left, I guess you could say, more in a holding pattern, with a number of criteria established that would be addressed at a future time, which we're at now, which would open the door for potential future redevelopment. So the zoning that's on the site now pretty much allows low rise in what's currently existing, but it says, based on a number of criteria through a holding provision, a property owner can consider increasing heights and densities on the site, and that's what we're proposing today. So the applications that you've seen come through are for zoning as well as the site plan control, and they're running concurrently. They're being reviewed very extensively by the city, who aren't here today, but again, as Councillor Johnson mentioned, can answer any questions as well, and result in a fulsome review by a number of experts at the city and as well as outside stakeholder groups. I guess another important aspect of the zoning is the parking. We're currently in Area C, which is the city establishes various parking rates throughout the city, which calls for a 1-to-1 parking rate. That has been in the official plan. That's something that's being considered for alteration and changes, specifically based on the future higher order transit that's meant to come along baseline, as well as moving towards other forms of active transportation. So the official plan also provides that guidance here in terms of reducing the parking, which is another ask as part of the zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, team. Saying that, I'm going to take over this presentation, and please allow me to continue to the concept. So I want to give you some context. We are proposing 3 different towers of different heights, and practically we are creating a podium 5-story high, who is located within the middle of the property. We are located on the Polycom area, and as Tim mentioned before, is on the 2946 Baseline Road location. The reason of the podium is to have a transition between a high-rise proposition and the low-rise neighborhood already existing. So we want to provide a sense of arrival that takes care of a pedestrian ambience and practically provide these feelings for the community. We also want to support mental and physical and emotional health within this project. And we wanted to provide easy access to parks, educational facilities, health facilities, and shopping malls, saying that we are going to be practically extending our project into the existing mesh or web.
Frank,
yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Are you able to make this full screen on your computer so that it takes off the side tabs maybe and like makes it bigger for us to see on our end? You know what I mean? Like make, it's moved over a little to the left, but I don't know if there's a way of like slideshow, you know, you press F5. It's a little bit bigger. Yeah. I don't mean to frig with your flow. I just, I wanted to see if there was a way to bump it up a bit. Thank you.
Let me zoom in on some areas when I'm going to be focusing on this. Yes.
Okay, beauty. Merci.
So, in regards to the massing, we are proposing 3 different towers, different heights, and we want to accompany them with a parkland dedication. Practically, we are giving 10% of its plot area. That will be practically the area right here, center of the property. But on top of that, we want to extend this park and blur the limits. And we're going to be practically exploring the idea of a communal semi-public plaza. I'm saying just semi-public simply because it's the intention of our client to accompany the services and activities part of the park, but it's not dedicated to the city, it's dedicated to the community on private property. So saying this, we enhance this with a semi-public plaza, who is the heart of this project. Practically, we want to share this with all the different buildings located here, but we also want to share it with the community. So again, we are expanding the boundaries and intentionally blurring those limits between public and private. I also want to let you know that we have a slope. Practically, Baseline Road is lower than the corner that we have here to the south of the property by approximately 3 meters. So when we have to walk the hill. Saying this, we are very conscious of this, and we are always exploring with Jonathan universal accessibility in all cases. So our landscape architecture is going to show that in the next page. I'm going to just move to the next slide, the massing. So we are trying to best integrate this project into the existing fabric. Practically, we want to maximize the sun exposure. This is why we left intentionally spaces between all the buildings. Practically, we allow for the sun to not only radiate on our buildings, but at the same time to pass and cross and practically reach the other areas of the surrounding lots or the surrounding properties. We also want to take into consideration co-working spaces other functions like daycare center as part of this project. This is with the intention of the client to provide services for the community. Actually, you will see later on the pages that practically the ground floor is offered for the community and also for some, I would say, spaces for the building residents. We have Tower 4 with only 9 stories. That one is this one here, practically to the right of the plan. We also have Tower 5 with 28 stories. And we intentionally created a difference going to Tower 6, which is 32. Why we put the high tower close to Baseline Road? Because we believe that this is going to be an iconic element. It's going to be an important element, and we just want to put emphasis on this corner so the community can easily understand where they are, use it as a reference point, and at the same time understand that below this building or below these buildings there are services offered for the community itself. I'm going to continue to the concepts related to the volumetry. The colors presented as part of the perspectives are based on a concept related to I would say cut or decorticate a little bit the buildings once they go up. So we want to create a very clean and open ground floor area where people can see through glass. They can see through the different functions that are behind this glass, and on top of it, we want to create a podium that is going to remind of the urban low scale, low density surroundings that we have around us. The towers are practically recessed, so they are not part of the volume or the platform itself. And our idea is to use that brownish material that is already present in the area and practically start clearing those patterns and try to go to the sky with a lighter color. So we want for the towers to start disappearing once they go higher. I already spoke about the podium, and for towers 5 and 6, again, they are set back, and we just want to accentuate the sense of elongation. This is the expectation around the base and the ground floor spaces. We want to enrich living space, and we also want to animate the pedestrian life. Practically, we took knowledge of the official plan for the city of Ottawa for 2050, and we want to offer this type of community spaces or services to a bigger scale. As the councillor mentioned before during the first minutes of this meeting. So we want to encourage a 15-minute neighborhood walk, and practically we want to use sustainable transportation. We also are encouraging the people that will be using these buildings to use public transportation as their main way of displacement. And we also want to put emphasis on walkable and cyclable neighborhoods. So practically here, we are trying to accommodate this universal accessibility strategy all over the property. We also include different typologies. It's not only condominiums, or sorry, not condominiums, but suites as part of the towers, but we're also exploring the idea of having some townhouses. Practically, we want to be part of those existing houses on the other side of Sandcastle, and we want to bring this townhouse experience also as part of our property. This way, we can also allow for people to circulate on ground floor, practically have access to gardens, yards in front of their property, and practically continue this feeling of neighborhood and community along Sandcastle Road. Now, in terms of landscape, I'm going to invite my landscape architect, Jonathan Loskman, to explain.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. We're really excited about the direction the landscape is taking to date, and look forward to your comments today. And I expect, or I hope that you've seen in the discussion that Frank's put forward, a significant investment or direction looking at green and the potential to naturalize and reforest the site. More than half of the site would be considered, accessible by pedestrian throughout landscape, and we're looking at intensely concepts surrounding crime prevention through environmental design, such that this is a safe and comfortable space that stitches into the surrounding neighborhood. We're looking at microclimatic landscape design features and solar orientation quite actively, amplifying that it's in all seasons a landscape of interest, both winter, spring, summer, and fall. And in response to building program and your community adjacent the site, we're looking in the landscape of the development to create places for spontaneous social interaction, and we're referring to these spaces as nodes. So we see a series of nodes that would accommodate bike parking, spatial provision for other park amenities and features. And we're working currently right now and through this process at what the best facilities within the site and the parkland dedication would be to serve you and serve the community. The last point I'll make, and then look forward to hearing any questions later, is looking at integrated stormwater management, or being serious and progressive about sustainable technologies and how we manage stormwater on the site. I'll hand it back to you, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So again, the parkland dedication is very important for us. We are practically taking advantage of the site topography, and we are thinking of universal accessibility. We want to invite the local community to use this area. We allocated the area or the center park as part of the core of this development, so is in equal distance from all buildings and also accessible directly from Sandcastle Road. We allow for it to practically be radiated by sun and air during the entire year. And we want to also integrate a semi-public plaza as an extension of this allocation already given. So practically you can see the different images. Greenery is really a strong point of this development. I also want to touch this very quickly. For those of you that like sustainability, and I believe in sustainability 100%, I am happy to inform that our client is eager to advance on this development with using sustainable architecture and sustainable strategies. So the use of materials, the type of materials, the type of vegetation, the circularity between materials, and the efficiency of energy usage is something that we are already mandated to investigate and apply on this project. We also include as part of our approach wellness, mobility, sense of community strategies, and we practically want to be responsible in terms of residual matters, same time the ecosystems. So we will be applying the new technology related to protection of bird-friendly glaze technology. Now I'm going to jump into plans and sections. Again, this is practically a demonstration of the landscape architecture that we have as part of the site. What you see here is the richness of textures, the integration of vegetation, and that possibility to integrate the park not only as a specific element, but also let it grow within the property. So I'm just happy to inform that we are thinking not only on the park, we're also thinking about a podium level that is going to also integrate some landscape features. Saying this, we are thinking about green roofs part of this development. So practically, we're going to be part of the vegetation that is around us, and we are going to be providing more. At the same time, and very quickly, we are very conscious of the conditions of the site. We're trying to be as functional and effective as possible, and we are reducing the number of cars. So at this time, the city is asking for a ratio of 1.2 cars per unit, but in reality, pre-yield and taking advantage of the public transportation systems that are going to be close to us, we're going to be practically reducing that by 2 or 3 times, saying that we're going to be just providing around 300 cars. This is to encourage people to use public transportation and allow for this building to start its life based on this principle. As I explained before, practically the ground floor of Tower 6 is going to be offered to the community as part of the commercial spaces. The ground floor of Tower 5 is going to be distributed between amenities provided to the community, but we are going to also include some townhouses. And for building 4, who is practically semi-excavated at this time, this is why you see some parking here, but in reality is not perceptible from a pedestrian point of view. We're also thinking about co-working spaces and actually a daycare. The podium is very simple. It's just a connection between towers 5 and 6, and the idea is to have suites on those floors. And you can also see that residences are part of Tower 4. After the podium, we're going to start with the towers. This is practically the 6th floor. The footprint of the buildings is reduced and again is set back. This is intentional, and the idea is to practically allow for these buildings to go on higher volumes. This is a typical floor plate, which demonstrates the different type of units. In reality, we're going to have 2-bedroom units. We're going to have studios. We're going to have 1-bedrooms. This idea is to serve not only a sector of the community, but actually bring different type of families, different sizes, different type of personalities within the area, and be more open to new families coming to this area, to this sector of the city. Sections, again, just to demonstrate that we're trying to allow for the elements, nature, air, sun, to be surrounding all buildings at all times. And again, the parkland dedication, which is very important for the project. Perspectives. So I think that this is more than 1,000 words. In reality, I just want to show you the building characteristics versus the rest of the city. As you can see, Baseline Road is passing and is very, I would say, important in terms of the geometry. It's a very wide road. And we also see that there are some high-rise buildings already happening along its way. We also have other high-rise residential buildings higher to the south of the site. So we are just, I would say, blending within the existing with our project. This is a higher or close up of the area. As you can see, we are trying to work our podium in order to reflect what is already happening within this residential neighborhood that is in front of us. We want to be respectful to them, and we want to integrate that sense of community with the townhouses in front of them. At the same time, we are using the topography in order to, I would say, have out parking underground and provide as much green space and sensations to the rest of the community. This is an image from Baseline Road and Sandcastle. This is the reason why this tower is higher, is because we definitely want it to be an iconic element within the sector. And I also want to mention that We are already putting a lot of attention into the finishes and the textures that is going to be part of this building. We wanted to create a texture that is going to be recognizable from different point of views within the area. This is from the interior of baseline. This is practically facing where we have towers 1, 2, 3. But as you can see, the architecture is practically descending towards the ground floor and practically continuing the design intention of the towers. Again, just for concept, the idea is to have all this park and all these different services surrounding the park. This way, we will have an area where we're going to be able to relax and practically use it as a breathing space. But we also want to contribute with services for the community and be as open as possible. This is also from the interior street at baseline, but as you can see, our intention is really to open the ground floor as much as we can. This is just a demonstration of how we are treating the landscape with architecture, and we are trying to hide and have everything that is related to parking or services underground. So the cars circulating or parking is always going to be underground and hiding. Just a final perspective in regards to the townhouse concept. This is the integration of the townhouse type of suites and the building itself. Some elevations are available for you. I'm sure that the city will be able to share this with you. It's just the use of prefabricated materials. We are responsible in terms of sustainability. And again, the colors are well represented here on these images. So I invite you to simply take knowledge of this, and you can see the different or the richness of the colors that we're using within this project. Again, more of those elevations. Now, for your information, we already have all sorts of statistics available. We just wanna let you know that they are for consultation purposes. You can contact the city if you wish. So, saying this, Councillor, I think that we are right on time. I was looking at the clock, and I just want to be respectful on your agenda. So thank you very much for your time. And again, we are here to respond to all questions.
Thank you very much. So if anyone has any questions, we will encourage you to type them into the chat function or the Q&A function. We're just experimenting a little bit with the format here, and I am going to allow for Heather Perot, one of my teammates. I should have introduced her at the beginning. Heather is here and Chelsea is here as well to support forwarding these questions to the appropriate team. So I think that they're starting to come in now. So
they are, yeah. I think one of the big questions that we're seeing is about parking and guest parking for phase 1 and phase 2. If you can speak to that, would be helpful, I think, for people.
Yes, guest parking is already accounted for within our property or within our project. We are 100% fulfilling requirements for commercial, guests, and visitors. The impact is only given to the residents, and we are trying to match a 0.5 ratio for them. Is there anything else that you would like to ask?
I think just with the commercial further, so that some of the underground parking and the commercial parking, I think people just, if you can plain language explain how the parking is working in the plan. I know you've done a great job showing it, but if I think people want to hear it a little bit.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So we're trying to minimize the number of cars that are sitting on the streets on ground floor. We are practically providing for 2 ramps that are going to be descending to underground parking levels, 2 of them. The underground basement 1 is going to serve commercial and visitors. And practically underground basement 2 is going to serve the residents. So it's going to have this interaction happening, but keeping the privacy of those floors specific for residents below. And again, we are in conversations with the city, and the ratios have been offered to them. They are happy to see that this is a public transportation oriented project.
Okay. Another question that a couple people have asked is about the retirement home in phase 1. Some of the plans are labeled retirement home, and is this part of the plans?
Well, the retirement home project was originally planned like this, and the idea is to receive those type of communities into the area. So it's part of the strategy to receive not only one type of families, but also provide services for people that are 65 and older.
Okay. And is there any plan to retain some of the commercial that's existing, or to invite new commercial that sort of offers like services?
I'm gonna ask Mr. Jean-Luc Rivard to answer to that question.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate everybody joining us tonight. So in terms of the existing commercial Dollarama, the Apple Tree, we are currently working with them, trying to possibly incorporate them into our new development. We do have a lot of commercial retail space proposed, but that is the intention, but it's still getting worked out as we speak.
Okay. And so one of the challenges here is that it's not currently a walkable neighborhood. And so there aren't a lot of groceries, restaurants, cafes, that kind of thing that people will tap into, you know, and if it's on the agenda, that's great, but it's years away. And then there's the conversation about the BRT. So I hope you guys can speak to that, because there is that's slated to be built, but it's not on the, you know, it's not on the books yet. And so your project is speaking to that as an amenity, a side amenity to your project, and sort of just this 15-minute neighborhood idea, walkable. That's what a lot of people are looking for, is amenities that they can access without a car.
I think so. Our transportation engineer, in terms of talking about traffic and the BRT coming online, transportation engineers sends his regrets he couldn't make it today at a conflict, but we did have a good chat before this meeting this afternoon, and obviously we can answer any questions via email, or if anybody wants to reach out to get into more detail. We did talk about the BRT corridor, and from what we understand in discussions with the city and kind of following the process of that, I think it's coming out in 2 phases. So there's the eastern phase of the BRT along Baseline, and then Walkley up to the like the Alta Vista area, which is planned currently for a pre-2031 implementation. So that would be in the next 8 years. The city is working on detailed design and funding models for that. And then on this portion of Baseline, the western portion of that, it is post 2031. But in the interim, we understand that the city is hoping to incorporate a number of, I guess you could call them interim measures, which are transit priority interventions. So things like light priority, queue jumping, more frequent rapid service. And the intent would be to get people in the interim, until this full BRT is online, to get people to the upcoming LRT station up at Woodruff and the Algonquin campus, and also to other connecting routes to help to kind of foster that frequent and reliable transit service in the area. So in that sense, it is an ongoing process and it's coming out in phases, but I think it's also important to remember that this project is quite a large project for Brazil as well, and isn't intended to come online tomorrow either. So, you know, if things align, then these amenities, transportation, as well as other aspects of community that make it more walkable, hopefully will be coming along as this project is developed. And Jean-Luc or Frank, maybe you can speak more to the timelines of that, but I'm assuming it's, you know, we're still working on 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6 are years away, I would assume, in terms of construction of the site.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in terms of construction, Tower 2 is supposed to be finished in 2025, following by Tower 3 in 2026. And from there, if everything goes well, zoning in place, we'd probably be starting probably in 2025 or so, or 4th tower, and 5th and 6th go on. So yeah, it's probably the next 10 years of a development around.
Okay, perfect. One of the other questions is about rental versus home ownership. What kind of mix or whatnot are you planning for this site?
This site is completely all rentals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you have any commitment sort of to like affordable housing? Like, what are your rates? Do you have tiered rates depending on on where you are? Anything like that in the plans?
Yeah, so our intention is to help out and provide some type of affordable housing. It could be included in our development or in some other type of fund for affordable housing in the community. We're still evaluating our options, and I've been talking with the councillor about this also, but it's ongoing, but we are planning on helping out with the affordable housing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So another traffic question. So the baseline Sandcastle intersection is something that the residents that live sort of behind this site have asked us about quite a bit. There's also concerns about cut-through traffic in other neighborhoods like Qualicum, Monterey. But I think that the Sandcastle question sort of merits its own answer, and then the cut-through traffic sort of a different answer.
Again, I'm just kind of relaying some of the information that I've received from the traffic and transportation engineer. From what I understand, the Sandcastle approach to baseline has recently been upgraded. So there's additional turn lanes, which I think is anticipated and meant to help improve flow and accessibility there. I think that, as mentioned, the right-of-way width on baseline is already substantial, and obviously there are congestion issues at certain times of day, which is very common, you know, throughout cities such as Ottawa, larger cities. So not uncommon, but something that I understand is a concern for residents. So those types of concerns are, you know, trying to be addressed through transportation demand management approaches, providing for alternative modes of transportation. I think there was also a discussion there about cut-through traffic, and possibly I would assume a secondary question there would be off-site parking within the community. You know, it's always difficult to predict behavior and people's actions once they're on the site, but the idea is that baseline, the access to baseline is quite robust in phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, and that is, you know, considered to be the most efficient route to and from the site, and therefore it's anticipated that the majority of traffic coming to and from will predominantly be on baseline. It's not efficient really in terms of a route to use to come in a back road, but obviously there's always opportunities with Councillor Johnson and others to discuss traffic calming measures on those secondary streets if need be, if that does become an issue, but it's not anticipated at this time.
At this time. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we have a comment from Patrick. So he's commenting about how this is increasing housing. This is something we've heard a lot. You know, regardless of the you know, affordable question, it's increasing housing. There's a lot of people that are overhoused in some of these neighborhoods really nearby, and they might want to downsize. And maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Sure. This is part of a strategy that the city of Ottawa is implementing in different areas of the city. The idea is to densify areas, providing more affordable housing and more residents to the community. This is something that has been more than 10 years under development. And you may know that the city of Ottawa is growing in population so fast, and practically the availability of those residential units is not there. So they are encouraging companies, developers to provide this type of projects in order to resolve a question related to that. Densification is something that the city is also thinking of, because definitely high-rise buildings provide, I would say, a more economical way of construction when compared to small houses on a number per acre. And also, when we have these developments condensed or densified, are more effective in terms of sustainability and energy consumption. It is, I would say, takes less effort to heat a residence when it's part of one of these buildings than when compared to an individual house. So this is all part of a series of concepts that are practically one or part of a universe where we are moving forward the future or towards the future in order to provide all those better communities for future generations. So the city is very responsible with this, and we as architects were always thinking about different ways to ameliorate this for future. And of course, we are now not only applying LEED and other strategies, but we're also now thinking about carbon zero. So all those strategies are already part of this. Our client has mandated us in order to investigate them with them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Frank. So one thing maybe you can speak to is the sunlight and the shade. So we've heard some concerns about people be shaded. I've heard a couple people say they might have too much sunlight because of the windows. If you can speak to that in your design, and maybe like
Yes.
some bird friendly language around that too.
Yes. We provided sun studies as part of our proposal. They are respectful of the neighborhoods, and we are practically demonstrating that during most of the year we will not be impacting the community. The only periods of the time or the year where shadows can be generated will be during winter, but in reality is because of the angle that the sun is taken when we are during the winter months. But this is I would say the reality of all our cities. This is something that is not only related to this project, is related to the geometry of the Canadian geographic location. So we can all understand that. In terms of the envelope itself, the angles that we are trying to project on those elevations are to disperse light in a gentle way and through the different areas. So we are not, we are trying to minimize the radiation of that light into the neighboring communities. This is why we are putting attention into that envelope design. And in terms of the bird-friendly strategies, yes, we because we have different projects being developed on the 3 different cities, we have learned of the movement patterns that the birds have during the entire life, during the year, and we know that we are fortunate on this project. We are not part of those paths. However, we know that we have local species that are practically living around us, and because we are going to have a park as part of this development, we wanna offer also the opportunity for these birds to live within that area. Saying this, we will be applying different glazed strategies, different textures, part of the fenestration systems that are easy recognizable by the birds. Saying this, the birds won't be hitting the glass. They will be able to see it, and we're gonna avoid casualties for the specific species. Yeah, for those specific species.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Bike infrastructure is so infrastructure near this development. Infrastructure sort of, what is your parking strategy for bikes? I know you have a bike rental as part of the sort of proposal, but people with just sort of their own bikes, and then how are they getting in and out of the site, and where are they going?
Yes, we have added to this ground floor and second floor building volumes a specific bicycle storage with ramps and lifts for them. In reality, we are providing more bicycle stalls than what is requested by the city. We are going to be providing around 400 of those when city is only asking for 350 approximately. So our idea is to give the opportunity for the users to use the bicycle as one means of transportation again.
Okay. And just so you're also talking about car share as part of this plan. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes. It started in Toronto about 10 years ago and had a great impact within the Toronto downtown area. Practically one car is equivalent to 10 private cars. And when you are part of this community service, practically you are capable to simply drop a car on a specific location, and the next day you can just go back and pick it up. What we have learned from the Toronto experience and now applicable into the Ottawa area is that it is as effective as it was in Toronto, and we are contemplating one common auto car or one shared car to 8 or 10 private cars. So saying that, yes, it is of the interest to accommodate this kind of service within this project. We have done it on other projects outside of the area and as part of Brigil's properties with successful stories to tell. And I can also mention that Montreal is also taking advantage of all this knowledge, and there are the 3 cities collaborating in order to make this a common strategy in regular terms.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I think that some people, I think, are realizing they don't all need their own car. I don't even necessarily need my own bike. If I share with my friend, we're better off. So I think one of the questions that is looming is the construction noise. So that you're going to have a couple years, and the residents around here have had a couple years, and ways that we can mitigate just the what time of day, the parking. I think is there's a lot of and it's not just you. There's other projects that are happening around your development right now. So there's a lot of contractors around, and people are nervous, and it's loud already. And so they'd like to see what you would like to see about the sort of the noise and the construction disruption.
Well, we cannot comment on behalf of the contractors that are working, but it is of our knowledge that they are filling all the requirements by city standards. And the good news about having all these different buildings connected is that they are capable to minimize the work and practically bring up these structures, I would say, on a faster and higher way. So I think that the noise is going to be maybe expected during the erection of these structures, specifically during foundations. We all understand that. But after that, the use of prefabricated systems is practically avoiding that problem. This is our intention. Our intention is to create or use new technologies that are going to be easier to install, and this way avoid that problem for the community.
Mm-hmm. And so you would comply with any existing regulations, and anything that was above that, you would
I believe so,
alert
yes.
the community and
The
and go from
contractors
there.
are obliged to do this, yes.
Yeah, okay. So one thing we haven't talked about is the height too much. So there's some questions about the height. There's also some questions about the massing of the podium, you know, because even a 4-story, it feels large to some of this stretch of baseline. And then having that, and then the towers above it. Can you speak to the height and that context?
Well, the height is part of this strategy to accommodate high-rise buildings around the baseline corridor. Of course, as Timothy mentioned, there is, I would say, an intention to have 40 stories as maximum, but in reality, we are not seeking for that. We're seeking for less than that, 32, 28, and 9. This is to create this degradation going into the rest of the community and other areas. The podium itself is something that is being treated this way in order to be reactive to the low-rise buildings that we have surrounding us. We are in conversations with the UDRP and with the city staff about this. So we're going to develop our project based on those principles and comments. We're going to continue the evolution of the design during the next months.
Okay. I think where I'm coming from is that we've had a lot of questions, and we raised this earlier in the meeting, is that the first phase sought a zoning, I think it was 9 stories. And now there's a zoning amendment being sought for 32. And can you explain the context of why that changed and how we got here? Because some people are just a little uncomfortable. They either participated initially in that consultation. There's things at the city that has changed. There's things at the province that has changed since then. And just help people understand, because there's a lot of pushback about the height.
So I can talk a little bit to the zoning specifically, and then Frank, you can feel free to jump in terms of some of the architectural design measures that we're looking to implement to help to ensure that there is that transition that the official plan is really looking for. As Frank mentioned, and Councillor Johnson as well, it's up to 40 stories, and then you start to look at ways through massing, articulation, transition, building orientation and size, and towers and things of that nature that then kind of sculpt, mesh, pull the building down a little bit to ensure that it's something that doesn't lead to those adverse impacts for the community. And having a high-rise building next to a community isn't necessarily an adverse impact, but it's how that building interacts and interfaces with the community, which has been Frank's team's major objective here, is to make sure that transition is appropriate. In terms of the zoning, the phases 1, 2, 3, which are currently approved and under construction, received the permissions for those high-rise buildings, and then the phases 4, 5, and 6, there were the 8 or 9 stories to the rear, but the majority of the property was left in a holding position or provision that said, here's what's on the site now, and that's permitted as of right, and can continue. And if you redevelop, it should, for an interim measure, it should function in the same way. But if future redevelopment is considered and it looks to request increased heights, then here are a number of criteria that must be adhered to achieve those heights. And so that would be lifting of the holding provision and coming back in and starting to discuss what a redevelopment of this portion of these 2 sites looks like. And so that's what we're doing now, and using direction from the province and from the official plan, as well as just good best practice for urban design and building design, is how we've arrived at the building heights and profiles that we're proposing today. And as Frank's mentioned, and Councillor Johnson, it's early on in the process, so we are here listening to concerns and taking notes and looking for ways that this project can respond and adapt and still achieve all those objectives that we mentioned earlier from the city, and to accommodate this growth. I mean, Ottawa is in a declared housing emergency, and there's a dire need for additional housing units all throughout the city. So this, amongst other projects, they're looking ways to address that. So that's kind of how those are some of the topics that we kind of address to arrive at what we're proposing today.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Do you have examples? Like, have you guys built successful similar projects, or can point to ones that people would recognize or feel familiar, sort of in a similar context?
Yeah, yes. We're working on a number of projects throughout the city. Obviously, this is the team that has been assembled here today for Brazil to work on this site. So, you know, Frank and I and John and Jean-Luc don't always work together on the same sites, but the city's official plan is directing growth, you know, to certain areas. And one of those areas that is really have been a priority area identified in the official plan is these Main Street corridors above 30 meters in width. So we're looking on Montreal Road in the east. We're looking on, you know, Baseline here. We're looking at Carling. All of these roadways and right-of-ways that have this width and have been identified in the official plan we're seeing lots of applications come in that are looking at ways that they can achieve those objectives and again, provide good design. So I could put together a list for you, and it would be from my perspective, and I'm sure Frank and John have their own examples, but throughout the city it's becoming more and more of a active application and evolving in the way that these what were used to be called arterial main streets are kind of being developed.
Okay, thank you. Concerns about sort of the park space, you know, there's not a lot of it. It's shared private-public space. Can you speak a little bit about the parkland dedication and what that parkland is going to look like? If it's private, you know, if it's a cafe space, then, you know, do you need to be buying something to be there? And then there's the larger space, trees. If you can speak to that little space, that'd be great.
I'm going to invite my landscape architect, Mr. Jonathan Luxman, this.
Yeah, good question. Thank you for it. And if I could, I picked up a few related questions around permeable pavements, et cetera, that if it's okay, I'll speak to. So maybe I could elaborate a little bit on the concept. We envision, well, I guess from a parkland dedication perspective, the area would be, as currently proposed, roughly 0.12 hectares, so about 34 meters by 34 meters. And within city definition, it's an urban plaza. And the concept is that this would be a naturalized urban plaza to bring in those opportunities for native tree plantings, contribution to urban forestry, and there were some comments about disturbance to pre-existing trees, and this is a significant opportunity to reinstate trees to the area. There's certain concepts around healthy urban forests that we're looking into, and currently the features within the park would include seating areas, potential for a water feature, small play facility, and as I've described, significant trees with areas for passive play. The guiding landscape principles that we're looking at, as aforementioned, is to create opportunity for spontaneous social interaction. And it is undeniable that this will be a busier social space than it currently is. And I would argue, you know, from an activity perspective at the pedestrian level, than it has been known to be. I think this is a great opportunity and would drive to the idea, if you've not come across it, of placemaking that looks at social considerations of spaces, their uses and activities, the linkages. We've talked a bit about that, not only from a vehicular standpoint, but also bikes and pedestrian, and then how we design it. And I'm confident that we're on a path to do this in a sophisticated and tasteful manner. Does the area create comfort and image? And those four categories, when you discuss placemaking, are generally what create places that people want to be and are comfortable, that then contribute to walkable communities. There was a question about permeable pavements. I mentioned low impact development earlier. This is a larger idea of integrating systems, natural systems with site grading that manage stormwater. And so permeable pavements is one that we're looking at, absolutely. We're looking at related interventions. And last point in terms of biking and the site and landscape, it's correct that there are no bike lanes proposed in the development itself. This would be a situation where you'd have, of course, opportunity for on-road cycling, and at basically the perimeter of the site would be dismount areas. And so we're looking at logical places in the exterior environment that you could park your bike and then enter into the activity, whether it's retail or other that you're looking at. It was on slide 19 of the presentation that Frank put forward, but really fascinating to me. Yes, there's much to talk about in terms of density, but at the pedestrian level, more than half of this space will be accessible and navigable by pedestrian, bike, vehicle. And I think that's an important part of the proposition and design that is worthy of interpretation. So sorry if I've gone too long, but I just wanted to tack a couple of things there. Yeah, go ahead, Timothy's got his hand up. Thanks,
yeah, Tim's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And, yeah, thanks. And Jonathan obviously explains it much better than I am, so I won't try. But I was just going to provide some clarity on what parkland dedication is. So it's through any redevelopment, 10% of the lands and/or cash of the appraised value of that land is dedicated to the city, and that really depends on how big the site is and how much land can be dedicated. So the city will never take a site below 400 square meters, for example. And in those situations, they'll always ask for cash money in lieu of that land, and then they use that to go to parks in the area, and some of it is citywide. In this instance, the site is large enough that it can accommodate that 400 square meters, and so that's been dedicated. It will be dedicated. It's proposed to be dedicated. It's currently on Bridgell's land. It will be dedicated to the city and separated from the private property and made public, and it'll have all the rights of a city park, and then the lands around that are forming part of that public space, it's the outdoor amenity, will just interface with the public land. So there'll be no private retail uses on the park. There'll be no access restrictions aside from those regularly associated with public parkland. And we are currently working with the city on the design and the location and things of that nature to ensure that it fits within their needs. But that's in general, that's how parkland dedication works here in this situation and throughout the city.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. So we only have a few minutes left before wrap up. So I want to get to a couple questions that we've gotten, we received. One is about the size of the apartments. We haven't spoken about, are they bachelors? Are they, 2 bedrooms? What's the mix?
Yes, I actually have the statistics in front of me. Practically, we are subdividing the buildings into 5 different types. We're going to have some townhouses. I would say 3 of them. We're going to have a studio for bachelor suites. Those are 124. That means about 20%. We have 1 bedrooms. They are going to be pretty much 33% of the combination. We have 2 bedroom units, who are also around, I would say, 30%. And we also have 3 bedroom units, and they are going to be counting for about 10%. Again, all these different types are to respond the different situation of families within the Ottawa region. We want to be accommodating different type of families and different size of families within the property. And this is part of the strategy that we consider important for the community.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you, because I think that's one of the challenges. We get a lot of small. I know we've had some questions about the rental rates. If you want to speak to that, that's I'll leave that to you. I know it'll change year to year, so that might be the challenge of answering that.
I will ask Mr. John to answer to that.
we honestly, I can't. This will depend on the size of the unit, and obviously there will be some affordable housing also potentially.
Mhm.
But
Oh.
honestly, I can't really speak to that
It's
now.
too early. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Why did you select Baseline instead of Robertson or another area, Marivale, Robertson, Green Bank? What is there a special, like, is Baseline offering opportunities that you didn't foresee, or that you know that they're on the horizon, I guess I should say?
Sorry, I didn't hear that question.
Baseline, like, is
Yes.
there a specific reason you chose Baseline, or is this like, is
Well,
this a great place
we
to
acquired-
build?
Well, we acquired this site in 2012. This was before my time with Brazil, and it's been part of our one of the lands that we put in a lot of time, and as we've been developing this land for close to 10 years now, so we're trying to listen to everyone. This is why we're having this meeting, and yeah, we'll incorporate a lot of the people's comments into this development, and we are seriously here to listen to people, and we'll change some of the design that we have done to accommodate some of the needs of the community.
Okay. Okay. I think that covers up some of the other questions, you know, that you've heard a lot of feedback. So it's great to hear you're committed to incorporating that. And this is an early conversation. I think the counterintuitive question is there, do you need more parking than you've proposed? Do you feel that you have adequate parking for when it is built? And I know we've revisited in a few ways when we talked about bikes and cars, car share and transit, but do you feel, because some of the questions that are coming in about, you know, just overflow parking, the grocery store, they're overlapping. If you can wrap up sort of that, do you have enough parking on site?
I can comment about it.
Thank you.
As we are educated by the city context and the way that the communities are evolving within years. There is a wave of sustainability strategies that is surrounding us. And this is because it's been proven that those developments that happened in the 70s, 80s, 90s were not effective in terms of managing energy, managing resources. So these days, the cities are moving forward to public transportation, ways of circulation, try to ask for density so more people can live on areas and practically be more responsible of the use of energy, and including transportation as one of these big elements that are I would say increasing or decreasing our quality of life due to expensive resources. Saying this, the carbon zero strategy that is already in place and is global is looking for reduction of the use of cars, the reduction of energies that are not renewable, and practically be responsible with the type and the quantity of energy that we use in terms to live. So we certainly believe that reducing the number of cars is a good strategy to accomplish this and be responsible for the new or with the new generations after us. We are going to experience, or we are experiencing, what is happening with climate change. We are experiencing what is happening with the waste of these resources, and I think that is the community of scientists and the community of professionals who are trying to help and develop these buildings that are more sustainable every day. So me personally, I 100% believer of sustainable architecture. I have to mention that I'm very pleased to hear that my client Brazil is one of those pioneers that really want to bring this into the cities. Is not public oriented. It is private sectors that are now taking into their hands this opportunity, and they are offering it. So that is certainly too plausible, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Frank. So just in the interest of respecting everyone's time, we're going to end, but please feel free, any questions that you haven't gotten to ask, by all means, email us at College Ward, and we're going to go through the chat and pick anything else up, and connect with Brazil and the planner as needed. And I'm going to pass it over to Lane to say thank you to everyone for being here tonight.
Yeah, so thank you very much for agreeing to come tonight. I can appreciate that some individuals were hoping to meet in person, but given the reach of an online ability to invite 90 plus people into a room to record, to share, it was decided by my office to put this meeting online and to try and maintain a degree of respect and mutual respect for the process together. So certainly I've been watching very carefully to the comments and to offer a little comment on that. This is not a done deal. That's not where we're at. As I mentioned, there is we're in the first phase of the planning process that we would have sent around with your RSVP reminder last afternoon. So comments are going to be gathered by Kieran, and as Heather said, please please bring forward your any questions that you felt were unanswered to collegeward@ottawa.ca, and we'll be able to get the information that you need to inform your comments to the planner. And as I mentioned before, the planner then puts together a report that will either, recommend refusal or recommend approval of this proposed zoning reamendment. There is a lot of opportunity for this application to be refined, and I believe we will be working together between now and when it's submitted to come to a place that will incorporate this feedback, as well as respecting the direction of the official plan and provincial direction. So I appreciate where individuals are suggesting that the official plan does not have the same relevance to the conversation, but it does in fact offer guidance as to where we will be welcoming growth. And so we will have to take that into consideration as we're looking at this proposal. Similarly, the province is asking all cities to create more density. So what happens at that point, once the report goes to a committee, if the committee then refuses the application, then there is an opportunity to appeal, and the appeal can go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, where an independent party will evaluate the merit of that refusal and make an adjudication on that proposal. So again, this is the first stage of the process. I appreciate that people feel frustrated with the fact that we haven't met in person, but under the recommendation of many of my council colleagues who have hosted these types of events in the past, out of respect for all the participants, and Brazil and Foten, who are contributing their time voluntarily to meet with us. These online spaces have been very effective in getting through the number of questions that we need. I think what we also need to let you know is that if you are a member of a community association, a tenant association, a condo board, you can register with the City of Ottawa to be notified about developments in your area. We received this notification, within the last 4 weeks, as you did, through the circulations process, but you also can be added to that list as a member of this association or condo board, that type of thing. And I think that will be important for those who want to get sort of a head start on this consultative process. So we'll share out the way to register for those within your bodies with some of our summary documents today. So again, I appreciate that there are questions that haven't yet been answered, given the volume of questions that we got during this time. So Heather has put forward in the chat our email address there. I appreciate everyone's time today. So again, thank you for coming. Thank you for your time and energy. And please do get in touch with our office if you're looking for better information or any of the guiding policies or studies. We will continue the conversation. So thanks again, and please don't hesitate to be in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.